And today, here, the 25th of September, we're having the International Day of the Deaf. In Sweden, we don't have a I want to sign the International Sign Language, but now when I've been listening to Sarat, he said it's very important that you use your own sign language. So that's also why I'm using the Swedish Sign Language today. So the interpreters has to take it to English, and then from English we'll do it to Sri Lankan Sign Language. I hope that's okay with you. Today, here, is the International Day of the Deaf, and that's a very important day that you show that you need your rights. The UN Convention that is signed here in Sri Lanka, they actually signed it. The 30th of March in 2007. But I've seen also that the laws in Sri Lanka and the UN Convention, they really don't go very well together. Sri Lanka has to work with their laws and change them so they can put the UN Convention together and ratify it. But also CFD, they are been fighting and really looking into the politicians. But if they don't have the support from you, it's hard to fight. If you all come together and fight and help them, it's easier, because then you are strong and you are a very important part of CFD. The World Federation of the Deaf has made a statement from the UN Convention. The World Federation of the Deaf got together in the board, and also 2,100 other participants came all together in South Africa, in Durban. That was recently in the summer, and what they said was that the UN Convention
Participation is a key human rights principle. However, without adequate access to sign language interpretation, then bilingual education and recognition of sign language, there will be important barriers to that. And to the full enjoyment of the deaf people of their human rights will not be possible if you do not have sign language. And this is reaffirming the importance of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and also the optional protocol thereto. And then I'm thinking specifically from Article 3. That is to respect for difference and acceptance of deaf persons as part of human diversity and humanity. Which means you as a deaf person will be accepted into society. And then Article 9. That is to enable persons with disabilities to participate fully in all aspects of life, including access to information, and also communications, including the provision of professional sign language interpreters. And Article 21 states, you need to recognize and promote the use of sign language. Article 24 states that you need to ensure the education of deaf children is delivered in the most appropriate languages for the individual and in an environment which maximizes academic and social development, and employing teachers who are fully qualified in sign language. That is very important. Article 25 states that you need to ensure that deaf persons have the right to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of health without discrimination. Article 30 emphasizes the recognition of the rights of the deaf people to take part on an equal basis with others in cultural life, including the recognition and support of sign languages and deaf culture, and the deaf identity. They also says that it's important to recall that deaf women and girls are often subject to multiple discrimination, and they emphasize the need to incorporate a gender perspective in all efforts to promote the full enjoyment of human rights and fundamental freedoms by persons with disabilities. That is what the World Congress has, that is their statement. And a lot of people has reacted to this statement and think it's very positive. There's a lot more articles in it, but I've selected a few that I think are extra important. And I also want to tell you some strong things within it that I've chosen out. They have 30 articles, but also 20 sub-articles. So there are 30 that talks about us, and the rest of them speaks how the Parliament should react to different subjects. And that's why you need to keep writing reports to the UN to say what you got and what you don't get. And when you do that, you can see the situation and find a good solution. And there's a good definition in Article 2. And this Article 2 defines the term communication. And that includes languages, display of text, braille, tactile communication, large print, also accessible multimedia as well as written, and in audio and plain language, and read text, also augmentative and alternative modes. And these are different means and formats of communication you can apply. And they also include accessible information and communication technology. And by languages, they then mean both spoken and sign. And the first point that I would like to emphasize is that many people think that the sign language is international. A lot of hearing people think this. So that's why we have to explain that it isn't. The deaf people have their own languages and their own rules and grammar that affects the language. So we have to explain this to the hearing people so they understand this. Because in Sri Lanka you have your own languages, and you also have your own sign languages. For example, this is the sign for mother, and the Swedish sign is mother like this. And this is the sign for rat, and this is the sign for rat in Swedish. So there's a big difference. And that's why we need to make the Parliament understand this as well, that there are that it is its own language. So that's why I think this article is so very good. And Article 9 states, it talks about accessibility. But what does accessibility mean? That means you need to provide forms of live assistance and intermediaries, including guides, readers, and professional sign language interpreters. And this is to facilitate accessibility to buildings and other facilities to the public. For example, the interpreters we have here today, if you wouldn't have our interpreters here, how would you be able to get the information given here today? Also to the hearing people, how would they get the information? That's why the interpreters are so important. But in Sri Lanka you only have 2 interpreters. In Sweden there are about 10,000 deaf people and almost 1,000 interpreters. That means that 10 deaf people share 1 interpreter. In Sri Lanka you have about 70,000 deaf people and 2 interpreters. So there's a very big difference. And the feeling I get when I hear that is that it isn't correct. So you need more interpreters here. And that's why you need to use the UN Convention to emphasize to the Parliament and the parliamentarians that they need to take up this question and discuss it so that you, in the future, can have more interpreters. Because they can benefit from this as well.
Well, Article 24 is about education, and that states that facilitating the learning of sign language and the promotion of the linguistic identity of the deaf community. It also says that ensuring that the education of persons, and children in particular, who are blind, deaf, or deafblind, is delivered in the most appropriate languages and modes and means of communication for the individual, and in environments which maximize academic and social development. If you have a deaf person, sign language is the best thing to use. But if you're deaf, blind, you need the tactile sign language. And as children, they can learn all of this, and they have a lot of knowledge, which they later on can give back. Well, the article is very long, but I also took one thing in the bottom with the number 4 on. The UN Convention, as I said, states that in order to help and ensure realization of this right, states parties shall take appropriate measures to employ teachers, including teachers with disabilities who are qualified in sign language and or in Braille, and to train professionals and staff who work at all levels of education. Such training shall incorporate disability awareness and the use of appropriate argumentative and alternative modes, means and formats